Revelation Revealed, Part 4, Section 40, The Two Witnesses. Revelation chapter 1 through verse 6. Verse 1 reads, I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and was told, Go and measure the temple of God and the altar, and count the worshippers there. The temple spoken of here is the temple in Jerusalem that is rebuilt by the Jews. He's also told to, at least in the NIV, to count the worshippers. The word count is not in the original Greek. It's really a poor translation. It should be take note of the worshippers. Now, the question amongst non-futurists is, God would not allow a temple to be built in his name. Well, the temple of Herod in Jesus' day when he was on earth was not anywhere like the temple of Solomon that was dedicated to the Lord and was viewed by God as his residence on earth. But Jesus called that secularized temple in his day the house of God. So if Jesus can call Herod's temple the house of God, this temple can have some kind of significance, at least to the Jews. Verse 2, but exclude the outer court. Do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months. That's a literal 42 months. Now, this is interesting. Right now, on the site of the temple is the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim temple. There has been some support of late for the idea that the original temple that Solomon built was not on the exact point where the dome is today, but slightly to the north. If that is the case, that would mean the Dome of the Rock is in the original outer court of the temple. You could have a rebuilt Jewish temple just to the north of the Dome of the Rock, and in Old Testament terms, the Dome of the Rock would be in the outer court, and that's maybe what this verse is saying. Verse 3, and I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1260 days clothed in sackcloth. 1260 days, 3.5 years, 30 days for a month in the Jewish calendar. We're talking about Jewish calendars here, not our Western calendars we use today. 1260 days means 1260 days, and I believe it applies to the first half of the tribulation. These two witnesses are in sackcloth. That's an Old Testament allusion. Prophets in the Old Testament humbled themselves before the Lord in sackcloth. It was a representation of repentance. These two witnesses are calling Israel to repentance. Verse 4, these are the two olive trees and the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. These two witnesses came from heaven standing before the altar. They're the two olive trees. Who could these two witnesses be? The three people most likely among futurists are Enoch, Moses, and Elijah. Some say Enoch and Elijah because they were transported up into heaven and didn't die. If these are real human beings coming back from heaven, I would make a guess to say that they are Moses and Elijah. Elijah didn't die. He got transported into heaven. Moses did die, but the account in the Bible states that no one knew where he was buried. It seems to suggest that God took his body from the earth. We see in the book of Jude that Michael the angel and Satan argued over the body of Moses. My guess is these two witnesses are Moses and Elijah. Verse 5, if anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. I believe that could be literally true. God can do anything he wants to do. If he wants fire to come from the mouths of people, he can do it. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. Verse 6, these men have power to shut up the skies so it will not rain during the time they are prophesying. And remember, Elijah had the power to do that in his day in the Old Testament, so that's a plus for one of these guys being Elijah. And they have power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. And again, Moses did these kind of plagues in his day in the Old Testament, so that's a plus for Moses.